Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Endless Celts Podcast. My name's Stephen, the host of the Endless Celts Podcast. I'm delighted to be joined again by my co-host John and a show regular Anthony. How are you both?
Very well, Stephen. Very well. Good to be back on after a couple of weeks away on holiday. Can't wait to get talking about another great weekend for Celtic again.
Absolutely. Same for me. It's been a couple of weeks that I've been on. I've loaded with busy and stuff and loaded with the cold and lost my voice and that in the last week or so. So it's good to be back, mate.
It's fresh voices. The listeners will be shocked. They've been used to me, Franny and Ross for the past couple of weeks, but it's good to get the rest of us back on and my co-host John's back, which is fantastic. But look, as you said there, another fantastic weekend for Celtic. Club football returned after the international football, which seemed like an eternity, but albeit things committed for Scotland. A big well done to them from us guys. And another thing I want to touch upon, not only is it the return to club football, but again, it's the return to Celtic's name being associated with trebles. Now, not on the pitch, but on the Celtic fan media side of things, our friends over at ASCOM, the Celtic State of Mind guys, have won a treble of awards at the Football Content Awards down in London, I believe it was held. And I think that's just fantastic. And a big well done to Paul John Dykes and the team. I'm sure we can all agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. The guys have, absolutely is, Stephen. The guys have been, get on a lot of the guests, the regulars on the show have been guests on here as well, and they've been a big helping hand with us, getting us up and running as well. So I was delighted to hear that they sort of cleaned up at the awards. But Celtic treble Celtic, it's just one of these things that that's just two words that go hand in hand. So yep, totally. I'll second everything you say there. Well done to all the guys over at a Celtic State of Mind. Well deserved.
Absolutely, second that.
Yeah, and I think it's a big thumbs up to the Celtic fan media. I mean, obviously there's certain quarters that give all fan media a stick, but the guys at the Celtic State of Mind proved that. I mean, they won a treble of awards, and as you say, Anthony, Celtic and trebles are just associated with each other, and a big well done to them. But we'll move on to the club football side of things, and a return to Celtic, and we were playing Motherwell at Firpark. Now, before the game that led into the international break, we won 2-1 away to Aberdeen at Pittodrie. Get into this one. Wee bit more confidence than there usually was, Anthony, around the club, around the fan base in terms of getting a result. And again, I hate saying that, but it was just the kind of run we were on in terms of away form. It was dire, but now it's 2 wins in a row, 2-0 victory. David Turnbull with a cracking peach of a goal, and Jota again just being himself, just smashing it in the bottom left corner, and he's been a revelation since he joined. But what was your overall take of that game?
It was very, very pleasing, Stephen. I think I was on the morning or the day after the result up at Pittodrie, and I was sort of saying at the time that it was a massive win, but it was only going to be a massive win if it then was something that we could build upon. And not only did we get the result on Saturday, as the manager said himself, the performance was much improved from that it was up at Pittodrie. We really controlled the game from start to finish, to be honest. I don't really recall Joe Hart having a save to make, really. I mean, he had the little cheeky back heel whilst he was trying to clear the ball away from his feet. But I don't recall him actually really being called into action, which I suppose you've got to give the defence sort of credit as well. Starfelt has been sort of much maligned since he came in, but I felt he had a good game on Saturday. And obviously, going forward, I think the gaffer was absolutely right to praise, sort of signal Tom Rogic out for special praise. I thought he had an absolutely magnificent game. And like you say, Jota, he's just continuing. He's fantastic for him. And it was just, it's always good to get a great result away from home, but the fact that it's built on a good performance as well, it just shows the progress that we're making.
Yeah, I mean, much like yourself, it was a much improved performance, Anthony. I think you're correct in saying that, and we controlled the game for large parts. And as you said, Joe Hart never had much to do apart from obviously the brilliant bit of skill that he must have brought up from Man City, brought it to us. And I mean, it was just composed again. He's brought a lot of composure to the back four. But coming to yourself, John, obviously before we get into the players, and there were some interesting decisions that you want to touch upon, but what was your summary of the game?
I thought it was great. I thought we played really, really well. It was good to see Rogic and Turnbull actually working tandem together on the pitch, because I think it's something that over the past couple of weeks that we've been looking at and saying maybe that the two of them on the park at the same time isn't something that's working for us. but it seemed to click at the weekend, and I thought we played really, really well. So a lot of players had really good games. I'm sure we'll touch on it in just a minute. But the only moment that really worried me was when the ball was played back to Joe Hart, and he done that wee flick out to the side. I think I don't know. My ass was in my mouth. Was it that? Is that the saying? My ass was in my mouth. My heart was in my mouth.
Something like that, John. We know what you mean.
I'm not familiar with the expression. Try to be smartly, but that kind of thing, that I don't like that. It worked, and it looked all right, and it was a wee bit of a moment where the fans go, "Hey!" But it was we need to cut that out. I think that's the only thing that worries me. The constant passing back to the goalkeeper and letting them sort of come towards us and press us, because there was a couple of times where, not just in that game, but in other games as well, I'm sure you would agree that there's been moments where you're like, oh Christ, and just we need to cut that out, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think Postecoglou, as we all can see, he's set in his way. He's already come out and said he's not going to change the attacking style, even going into this crucial European game tomorrow against Ferencváros, which we'll touch upon. But coming to yourself, Anthony, now, the starting lineup, there was this, I mean, the standout player who came in was Bolingoli in terms of left back. That was the biggest decision. I mean, do you think Bolingoli is going to get a run in the Celtic shirt? I don't think he's included in the Europa League squad, so he won't be playing in Europe as of yet. But do you think he'll be first choice going forward in the league and domestic cup competitions?
It may not necessarily be first choice, but I do think he will feature more. Obviously, we have like you say, I don't think he's actually included in the Europa League squad, and Ange Postecoglou did say in the post-match interview that he reckons that Adam Montgomery will be fit for Tuesday afternoon, should we say. So which begs the question, if he was perhaps more fit at the weekend, would he have started? We'll never know. All we do know is that, Bolingoli's came back this season. He's featured in 2 games. I was at the match at Almonvale, although we lost the match. Bolingoli was one of our better players. He didn't really do much. I don't recall him doing really anything wrong in the game. And in fact, going forward, as the match went on, he was the one that was sort of getting into decent positions to try and, get the ball across the park, or, take it. I think he actually had a shot at goal one point as well. So he was, the intent was there to get forward. And again, I don't want to sound disrespectful to Motherwell, but, they're not exactly PSG. But I didn't think he'd done anything wrong on Saturday either. He did the job that was required of him. There will obviously be the hypocrites in the media sort of saying that he should never play again, sort of due to last season and all that nonsense, whilst, very conveniently forgetting all the other acts by other clubs. More often than not, one club in particular when it comes to COVID breaches. Celtic are under no obligation whatsoever to not play Bolingoli. He's an employee of the club, and he's doing his duties as required at the moment. I would have no qualms about him featuring more often for us this season going forward.
I think it's quite interesting after you bring up, obviously, there's people in certain sections of the media will point to last season, and obviously what Bolingoli did was wrong, and we're no doubt about that. But some Celtic fans, John, took issue with it, and there was a large section of the fan base that didn't want him near Celtic Football Club again. But I've never really had that ill hatred towards him. Not hatred, that's a strong word, but like kind of, do you know what I mean? Not wanting him around. I've always thought he's a good player, and he played in the Champions League last season, albeit he got injured and he missed half the season with the club he was at. But coming back into the team now as he is, he adds a bit more experience at the left back position, especially now because Greg Taylor is injured. We don't know how long for. He's got an operation on his shoulder. Montgomery's still young and inexperienced, and Bolingoli for me is the right choice, is he not?
I mean, I would say that he's certainly in the opportunities that he's been given. He's certainly shown that he's capable, and this style that Ange is playing seems to fit him really well. It seems to be, he's like as Anthony alluded to, he was very good going forward, and he seems to link up well with Jota on the left as well. And like he says, he adds another element of attack, which I think we sort of miss under Taylor. I've been critical of Taylor in the past, and I'm saying he's no my first choice left back, and we needed to strengthen that position. You mentioned obviously skills. We don't know the situation with him and whether or not he's going to be the guy going forward, but it doesn't look like it. Obviously Taylor's injured. We don't know when he's back, as you mentioned. And it's just Bolingoli at the minute looks like a strong option, and I certainly agree that he will feature more. But I mean, he's done himself nothing but he's played really, really well, and he's done himself proud because there was, I mean, just touching on what you mentioned about the element of the Celtic support. I'm not going to get into it too much, but I mean, we see online there's a lot of Celtic fans that talk some amount of shite, and they don't really know what they're saying or what they're talking about. They just talk nonsense. And I'm not saying that I mean, we're all guilty of doing it at some point or other, but I think people were just too emotional at times. And they're clinging onto this COVID nonsense for last season. Was it a good thing? Should they have done it? No. Were we happy at the time? No, because it had a negative impact on us. But by and large, we still had the season's failings wasn't down to him. And as Anthony says, he's still a member of the club. He's still under contract, and he still reserves the right to play. And if we've got another player coming in and he's going to perform the way he has been performing, which is very strongly, that only benefits us. So I can't see why anybody would have anything negative to say or be upset or pissed off by it, because we need that position. We need a bit of depth at that position. So he adds that, and like I say, he's been very, very good for us going forward. And he certainly offers a better attacking threat, which, as I say, is in the style of football we're playing under Ange at the minute, is certainly more suitable. So I think that going forward we'll probably see a lot more of him. But would I start in my head of Taylor going forward as well? I would say, well, I would say yes.
So is that you basically saying he's the best left back of the club?
At the minute, I would say yes.
What about yourself, Anthony, in terms of Greg Taylor? Obviously, he divides opinion among Celtic fans. John's the perfect example of that. I mean, me, myself, personally, I agree with John on the very rare occasion that I don't think Greg Taylor should be Celtic's first choice. And that's not me advocating the Bolingoli's the answers to everything here. But
well,
I think personally,
just to establish that as well, I don't think Bolingoli's the answer either.
Yeah,
but I think he would, at this current point in time, he's definitely appears, in the grand scheme of things, to be the stronger option going forward.
Yeah. Where do you stand on that one, Anthony?
I think, like John says, that Bolingoli is probably more suited to Ange's style of play. I just think as well, though, that Greg Taylor, yes, he's certainly limited. I mean, we're not going to sit here and say that he's Andy Robertson or Kieran Tierney or anyone of that ilk, but he reminds me almost a little bit like a left-sided McNamara. He just does his job. He's maybe not quite as talented as Jackie was, to be fair, either, but I just feel like sometimes he's the one, because he doesn't do the long bursting runs, and yes, his final ball isn't the best either, but it can be, but for all intents and purposes, Bolingoli's suffered the same thing by a lot of the support as well. It's that sort of scapegoat mentality. Not accusing you two guys of that, just whilst just to make it clear. But I just think that there are large elements. You hear it every other Saturday, or I've heard it in the past, where it doesn't really matter whether or not Taylor or Bolingoli were involved in any kind of play. There was just an element of the support that were just eager to get on their back. Samaras suffered with it for long and weary. McGeady, I remember, used to get it really bad as well. There just seems to be certain players that they just like having a moan in it, and Taylor and to an extent Bolingoli seem to have fallen into that category at the minute. If I had a full choice available to me, I'd probably go for Taylor in sort of European games where he's got to be a little bit more. There's got to be a bit more positional discipline at the back. Perhaps for league games in the, at home especially, Bolingoli's more than adequate for doing the job that's required.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting you brought up the McNamara comparison with Taylor. I brought that up before and I've got pelters for it, but I can see where you're coming from. He's like a solid 6 or 7 out of 10, and as you alluded to, maybe he's not the same sort of standard of McNamara, but he gives you his all. Greg Taylor, I'll give him that. I'll give him all the praise I can, but personally, he's not the answer for me at left back. Bolingoli's a more solid option. And people will probably say, what are you basing that on? But I'm just basing on his past experiences with Rapid Vienna, winning stuff over there, come to Celtic, albeit that happened with the COVID thing. He went away again on loan and played Champions League football. So there is a pedigree of Bolingoli. I just think going forward, that's the best option, in my opinion. Obviously, people will be different. But moving towards the midfield, something I found quite interesting was seeing Turnbull and Rogic back playing together as a two in the midfield. And we spoke about this before, and I've actually seen a lot of chat on Twitter about it as well. People saying they can't play together. And me personally, I thought the same. And especially when Beaton came in against Aberdeen, I thought he played well with McGregor and Turnbull, and then Rogic come on further later in the game to make an impact. But coming to yourself, John, first, I mean, it is a hard one. Was it just because it's Firpark? It's a more open, expansive pitch that we're both playing, or do you think that's Postecoglou's preferred too?
I think it's probably. I mean, they've started more together more often than not, so it certainly looks to be on the surface he's preferred to. I mentioned it earlier on this episode, just when you came to me the first time, that it was good seeing them working together and that sort of bearing fruit, because like you mentioned, and as I said, it looked for large parts to no be working. It's like there was a conflict in the styles and everything else, and it looked like it might not be the best sort of combination going forward, and we might need to sort of swap things about and try something different. But as I say, it finally clicked, or at least it appeared to click at the weekend. Whether or not that's going to continue to remain the case going forward, we don't know. But it was certainly good to see, because I think the offer, well, you've seen with Turnbull's goal, fantastic goal. We've seen with Rogic and how he set up for Jota's goal as well. So what they offer Celtic in the middle of the park is individually and as a unit is great, but it's whether they can maintain that.
Yeah, I think that's the main issue, especially in tough away venues and even home games as well against a tough opposition. You need to be a bit more dig in the midfield, Anthony, in my opinion. I thought Beaton came in and did a great job alongside McGregor and letting kind of Turnbull express himself more. But again, John makes the perfect point. They work well together at Firpark, and it's a bit of a catch-22 situation for Postecoglou, because if he drops one of them and puts a more defensive-minded player in, it looks like he's going defensive. And if he starts the two and none of them track back, then after the game, everyone's looking back in hindsight saying, why didn't I start this guy for a bit more dig in midfield? And it's a bit like, it's hard to decide, isn't it?
It is, and the thing is as well that none of the two of them, perhaps apart from Saturday, have really staked a claim this season to say that they were sort of undroppable, really. I mean, Rogic has had days like Firpark at the start of the season, but then has sort of tailed off a bit. Turnbull also had a good start, but I would say from perhaps around the match at Ibrox up until the weekend, he'd sort of blown hot and cold as well. And even there was a couple of times on Saturday where he made the wrong decision a few times. But if you're going to do that, but then scored the goal of the season, then it's a bit easier to forgive, you know. Like you say, Stephen, there'll be all ranges of variety of opposition coming up between now and not even just January, the rest of the season. So there will be sort of afternoons and nights where that bit more dig in the middle of the park is required. And I agree with you. I thought Beaton did very well when he came on at Pittodrie. And as well, I also think as well, it all depends on what kind of fitness levels McGregor's at as well. I thought Callum McGregor, although he wasn't doing bursting forward runs, or he wasn't on the score sheet on Saturday, just the little bits off the ball, I thought he's the technician of the team, as they say. He's a solid 7-8 out of 10 every week, and if as long as we can keep him fit and in the team, then a lot of the rest of the midfield sort of picks itself. But if you're going to get more afternoons like that, then Turnbull and Rogic are certainly staking their claim for a more regular place in the team.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And you spoke about Turnbull there, and he's been blown hot and cold. And I do agree, there's some matches I watch him and I'd just be like, what are you doing? Because you expect so much more, Anthony, from Turnbull. And the goal he produced, John, it was out of this world, and he was involved in the build-up play for Yoda's first goal as well. And he's like a frustrating player, but when he does things like that, I mean, let's talk about that goal. As Anthony said, that's goal of the season right now, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. When he, I think, I don't know if I might be alone here, but when he struck it initially, I thought obviously he was just hitting it, and to me, it looked like it was going to go wide or it was going to just miss the goals. I think the keeper obviously thought the same because he was rooted and he just watched it, and then obviously it just nestled itself in the top corner. Absolutely beautiful strike. Like, I thought it was definitely up there with goal of the season so far, but the confidence to take it, and I want to see more of that going forward, us taking shots for that kind of range when we see space, because I think that one of the issues we're facing, and I've noticed it in recent games especially, is when we come up against these teams, we're going to dominate possession, and I've said this before, you're 9 times out of 10 you're going to be playing essentially 90 minutes trying to break down 11 men. And again, that's not a slight on all the other teams we're playing, but that's just how they come up. They play against us. They don't open themselves up too much. They maybe try and wait and hit us on a counter attack, which has cost us in the past because we play so high. But at the same time, they've got 11 men behind the ball, and we're passing it about in front of them quite a bit. And it's very, very difficult to get a ball in behind somebody, break the lines, and then we're trying to utilise the width, which is something we've been screaming about as well. But you're floating that ball into a box packed with men, with 11 guys defending the ball, and it's very, very difficult to get somebody on the end of it. So I think when you find the space outside the box and to take a shot, sort of draw them out, let them know that they can't just sit back, and we're going to have to pull them out a bit, come forward and try and create a bit of space as well. But I thought that was Turnbull's striking that goal was a perfect example of why we should continue doing stuff like that going forward.
Yeah, I think it's a great point where you say breaking the teams down, trying to play that neat, tippy-tappy football, Anthony, into the box sometimes doesn't work. And John says shoot from distance. And sometimes, again, as we're seeing with previous players, not going to mention his name, but he's down in the south side of England now, at Bournemouth. So, but, I mean, guys do need to take chances. And if you can strike a ball like Turnbull, then you should be doing that 2 or 3 times a match, shouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes off the way it did on Saturday, everyone's happy. I just think hopefully now with a couple of wins in a row, especially away from home behind us, that kind of confidence will grow. Players do tend to play a bit within themselves if things aren't going right, and they sometimes don't want to be seen by the fans as the one making the error that leads to the breakdown of play. So if we can build a few more of these results together, the confidence will only grow and grow, and we might see more of those long-range belters for Turnbull in the future.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously moving towards the forwards three of Abada, Kyogo and Jota. And people always talk about Kyogo and stuff, but I'm going to ferve away from him this week, albeit he had a fantastic game as well. But I just want to single out another guy, Jota, another fantastic game, John. And Benfica are looking 6.5 million, I think, for a buyout for him for the loan deal to be permanent. And I don't know if you guys have seen this. I've been watching it closely. I don't know if it's an official Benfica page on Twitter, but there seems to be this page going about of Benfica looking about all their young players are sent out on loan, and there's always clips of Jota and things he's doing in Europe and the SPFL, and all their fans, yes, it's in Portuguese, but it's translated a few of the tweets, are absolutely loving Jota. And I just hope that Celtic take advantage of this buyout clause, because he'd be a fantastic permanent addition to the team, wouldn't he?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like come January we should be exercising that. I think we just try to get it over the line and I don't want it to be a situation where similar to the Paddy Roberts situation. I know that Man City, I don't know how much Man City were expecting for him, but I think initially it was a wee bit out the price range of what Man City were wanting. But 6 million for the way Jota's playing at the minute and the kind of player he looks to be, 6 million is a steal in this day and age. So it for me it's a no-brainer. And the fact that I like the fact that we've brought him in on this clause. And Carter Vickers is looking to be the same, by the way. It's obviously, I think there's an option to buy in that contract as well, but I think that's something we should be looking to exercise. But for Jota, it's a no-brainer for me. I remember I've got a lot of friends when I was at university. I met a lot of guys from Portugal, and we're still friends to this day. And a few of them are Benfica fans. And I asked, as soon as we signed him, I was asking about him, and they were like saying that he's a fantastic talent. He's been touted as the next big thing in Portugal, and it's not quite worked out for him because that Benfica team is absolutely loaded, and he struggled to sort of break into it. But by all accounts, he's meant to be a potential world-class talent. So 6 million is a steal.
What about yourself, Anthony? Your opinion on Jota? I haven't really talked too much about him, but fair in. What do you think?
I'm just like John. I'm very much tempted to try not fall in love with the guy because he is still technically just a loan player. But I really, really want this guy to be signed up on a permanent deal. And the deal does differ a little bit from Roberts. I know what you mean, John. I think City were always reluctant to sell him, even although it was very obvious that he was not going to break into that Manchester City side. Whereas the fact that we've got this buyout clause or option to buy in this contract deal already, like you say, absolute no-brainer that we get that deal over the line. And the thing is as well, he looks like he's happy playing his football here. He's got a connection with the fans already. He's obviously scored some important goals already. He's off the ball movement looks great as well. He looks a real talent, and I think he could thrive under Ange Postecoglou's style. I would have him permanently at Celtic Park in a heartbeat.
100%. I think as well, he's been a perfect replacement on the left-hand side for El Nusi, who is playing well, by all accounts, for Southampton down in England. And £6.5 million, get him signed up, Celtic. But moving on, and Anthony, you made a great point in terms of the away form. That's 2 wins in a row. Celtic's moved up to 4th place on 16 points. Team across the city on 20 points. They dropped points against Hearts. Last-minute goal. I don't know if you've seen the clips, Anthony, going around Twitter, but just the faces and some certain people, it's just funny to watch, to be honest. But I mean, in terms of the landscape of the table, we are looking up quite literally. We're moving up the table, and it's one of these things, isn't it, Anthony? We need to kind of gather that momentum and keep the pace up, don't we?
Absolutely. And we've got a couple of home games coming up now, although it's sandwiched in between that is what I imagine will be a very difficult trip to Easter Road. But you just have to, it's one game at a time, and we do have to keep building this momentum. Like you say, it's 4 points, but we've got the opportunity on Saturday where we win that match. It would be back to 1 point. Rangers play away from home on the Sunday, so there's that added pressure. And the thing is as well, once this first sort of cycle of fixtures has been played, it means that we have already been at Ibrox, we've already been to Tynecastle, we'll have been to Easter Road, we'll have been to Pittodrie, and also another couple of difficult grounds as well in Firpark and, the least said about the Tony Macaroni Stadium and our record there, the better. But we've had a real tough run of away games in this cycle. So, nothing in life is certain, but you would like to think that perhaps between now and the January break that we're going to have more home games, and it gives us a huge incentive to get plenty more points on the board, and it'll all come down, going into that winter break, the home match at Celtic Park, the New Year's Day derby. So, yep, I'm delighted that we've got a couple of away wins out the way and a lot of the tough away fixtures out the road. But like you say, home or away, we need to keep winning and keep building that momentum. And onwards and upwards.
Yeah. Well, momentum is key, Anthony, and I mean, you're right to allude to the fact from now till January, there's no excuse really for Celtic not to go on a run and gather that pace and get up that table and hopefully again aim to be top of it sooner rather than later, John. And looking at the goal difference, I mean, we're streets ahead. We're in 15. The closest team to us, I think, is Hearts, and they're on 9, and they're the only unbeaten team in the league at the minute. But looking at it as now, 2 wins in a row away from home, as Anthony said, home and away, we need to keep winning. It's just, as I said, Anthony, it's just about momentum and getting that pace up, isn't it?
No, absolutely. I think, like you said, momentum's key. 100%. I mean, I think one of the things that for me is, and a lot of, again, I've seen a lot online, and I've touched on it previously, is it's still very early days in the season, right? We didn't have the greatest start, and as Anthony quite rightly alluded to, we've had a tough start in terms of away games and fixtures. Especially when you can take everything else into consideration, the outgoings, try to establish a new style of football under a new manager who's had very little time, going into a new season with a tough set of fixtures. It's not been the ideal start by any means. And Stephen, you yourself have even said it's not good enough. And you're right, we should be winning some of these games, but it's still very early days. And we said this previously, and it's like there's a long, long way to go. And I think Ange kind of touched on that as well. He's obviously seen the comments that have been made online and the stuff that the media have been talking about. And then when he was asked about that, I thought it was a perfect response. And it just shows that he is watching, he's listening. But he's also he's no buying into the media shite, and he's no, he's not going to bite or anything like that. Because when they asked him about it, he was like, "Oh, I thought the league was over. We're just focusing on the games we've got." He's like, he's no biting. He's not going to buy into all that nonsense about the league being done and everything else. And as we've shown, teams are going to lose points between now and the end of the season. We might lose more. It's going to happen. And the fact that we've managed to pull it back to 4, considering the start we've had, and like Anthony mentioned, we've got a good opportunity to take it to 1 and put the pressure on Rangers as well, who are playing away. Then I think we're in a fantastic opportunity to seize it. So I'm no, as I said at the start of the season, and as I said on previous episodes that I've been on, when we've off the back of games with no one, I'm no worried.
I mean, I'm actually glad you brought up the fact that I said it wasn't good enough. And to be honest, John, I still stand by that fact. I think it's it's an excuse culture that I don't want to get into. Being a Celtic fan, we should have enough to beat the likes of Hearts. We should have enough to beat the likes of Livingston, regardless of what team it is in the SPFL, regardless of what state Celtic are in currently. In my opinion, we should have enough in the tank to beat most, if not all, the teams in the SPFL. And I'll stand by that, no problem. But I do agree, and I've said it before, we're in transition. And Postecoglou, you're right. I thought his comment to the reporter was fantastic when he said, "I thought the league was over, mate." Just kind of shut him down. And it's good to see a Celtic manager defending the club like that. And that's all well and good, but results dictate what happens as a Celtic manager. And Celtic need to be winning. We need to be top of the league. We need to be challenging for domestic cups. And at the moment, with these 2 wins in a row, hopefully that's an upward scale that we're going to go on, and we can be battling for first place come January. And that's something I'll be looking forward to watching. I'm sure you guys would agree with that.
Absolutely, yeah. It's just getting that winning sort of habit back is something that we've all been desperate to do, or see us doing, and we'll just take each one as it comes, and hopefully build on starting. Well, tomorrow night in Europe, obviously, or tomorrow. I keep saying it, tomorrow night, tomorrow afternoon, and but of course against St Johnstone on Saturday. Yeah,
and as you just rightly alluded to there, as quick as domestic action comes back for Celtic, we're back in European action tomorrow afternoon at a strange times of 3:30 in the afternoon at Celtic Park against our old foes, John, Ferencváros, who knocked us out of the Champions League not so long ago. And Postecoglou's already come out and said it's a must-win game in terms of kind of trying to qualify for either the Conference League or get further in the Europa League group and the knockout stages. The game at that time tomorrow, do you think that has a potential effect on the players, or the kind of atmosphere around Celtic Park? But again, it's not been confirmed how much tickets have been sold, but Postecoglou said it's going to be a healthy crowd. But it's a bit of a strange one all round, isn't it?
I think I read somewhere that the ticket sales have been quite strong for it, so I suspect it's probably going to be busy. But it is a very, very odd time to be having a game, especially a European game. It's you very, very rarely see stuff like that. Only if you're playing away in some mad country that sounds like it's completely made up. Do you feel, or do you see games getting played at weird times? Usually, you associate these, and as Anthony says, you just automatically say tomorrow night, because these European games are generally played sort of late evening and under the stars, so to speak, with floodlights and that, and it adds to the atmosphere. I do agree, but I don't know. It's a weird one. I mean, most of us are going to be working, so we might not even see the game. It's frustrating. As Celtic fans, it's going to be frustrating because, as I say, a lot of us, probably people who wanted to go to the game can't make it. People who want to watch the game can't because they're working. They've got other commitments. It's a bit of a kick in the teeth in that respect. But I mean, these guys are professional footballers, and the time of day that they're kicking off shouldn't affect them in any way, shape, or form. And for the amount of money they get paid, they shouldn't be greeting about it either.
There'll be some Celtic fans taking very long lunch breaks tomorrow, Anthony, I suspect. But I mean, looking at it, as John said, the time's irrelevant. It shouldn't affect professional football players, but more so, I think, the atmosphere. Obviously, we've both seen reports that it's kind of going to be a healthy crowd, but it's just the kickoff. I know it's not the clash with the Champions League football later that evening, but as I said to John, it's just a strange time, strange game, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think surely common sense could have prevailed. I understand why the match can't take place on the Thursday, because obviously the Police Scotland are going to be extremely busy and overworked with all of the world leaders and all their respective, ensembles and harems with them for the COP26 climate change summit. But I don't understand why a simple phone. I get we've just came through, or we're still in a pandemic where a lot of common sense decisions were made in terms of, okay, football's having to be played behind closed doors, so the 3 o'clock rule was the broadcasting sort of law was temporarily lifted, so people who had bought digital season tickets could watch the match. Common sense things like that. I know UEFA are very, very precious about their Champions League nights and their Champions League kickoff times, but surely a massive summit. I mean, this is the G8 on steroids, what Scotland are going to be hosting at the end of this week. Surely some sort of concessions could have been met where they say, look, for this one-off, may not be a one-off sort of summit, but for something of this scale, surely we can just play the Europa League match on the Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. I don't imagine too many people out with Celtic fans and Ferencváros fans are going to be tuning into it. I do accept that we're a massive club, but most eyes, neutral eyes, will be on the Champions League fixtures. I really don't understand why the match just couldn't have kicked off at 8 o'clock and, some form of normality could have sort of remained. That being said, it can have a sort of opposite effect. The one thing I am quite glad about is the fact that we're getting a Saturday 3 o'clock kickoff now, rather than if it'd been the traditional, our game wouldn't be kicking off till Sunday. So we've got a chance to, put some pressure on Rangers and Hearts domestically at the weekend. But it is a strange one. I remember a few years back, it's a decade ago now, when we played in the Europa League. I think it was the first full Europa League campaign under Neil Lennon. It was the season before he got us into the Champions League. And I think two of our 3 Europa League fixtures that year were played at 6 o'clock in the evening, but they were both at home. I was just lucky that I was at college that year, so I used to get a sort of earlier finish. So I used to, run from Edinburgh Telford College up to Waverley and get the train over just in time for kick-off to Glasgow. But it was strange then. So you think, God, another 2.5 hours behind that, 3:30 on a Tuesday is really bizarre. But, if we get the 3 points, I'm sure we won't be complaining too much.
Even 6 o'clock's a shout, by the way.
Yeah, as I say, I don't, unless the only thing I can imagine is unless Police Scotland have asked it to be even earlier, just to give them sort of more, perhaps, daylight hours to go through their sort of drills and security measures for the summit. That's all I can think of, because it just baffles me that, in terms of a footballing sense, why this game has to kick off so early.
Yeah, it is a strange one. But again, there's all red tape around kickoff times. As you said, Anthony, broadcasters, other competitions, and things can't intertwine, and it's just messed up that way. But it's the game. We're going to have to deal with the kickoff time. As Postecoglou said, John, for our European chances and hopes, this is a must-win game. And being at home against Ferencváros, you'd be thinking that this is a winnable game, albeit they did knock us out of the Champions League last season when they beat us 2-1. But get into the game as it is now, and I mean, off the back of our previous games at Bayer Leverkusen and more so Real Betis, when we kind of played better, do you think the signs are looking good for us to get a result in this game?
I feel confidence that we can get a result against Ferencváros in both legs. I think we can still maybe. I mean, it's difficult to say given the fact that the way the last 2 games went. The Leverkusen one's just best forgotten, but the Betis one, we actually showed signs, a lot of promising signs, and I think there's enough about us, at least on paper, and I think we're going to dominate much more of the ball tomorrow against Ferencváros, and I think there should be enough about us to see them off. But no, I mean, in terms of your Europa campaign and things like that, the 3 points are a must.
Yeah, and what about yourself, Anthony? Confidence-wise, in the game, how you feeling?
I think buoyed on by the back of a few positive results. So I see no reason why we can't go and get the 3 points. And I don't even necessarily think we've played that badly in the previous game, although the scoreline would suggest otherwise. Especially in the first half, we were in the game, and had it not been for the fact that Clark Kent was in goals for Bayer Leverkusen that night, I see no reason why we couldn't have. But it's just the way the game goes sometimes, and perhaps we could have been a bit more disciplined, shut up shop, and just accepted a 2-0. It's not in Angie's sort of makeup to do so, it seems, however. But yeah, I thought in spells we played well against Leverkusen. I thought in large spells we played well over in Betis as well. So a home tie, strange circumstances, yes, but I see no reason why we can't get the 3 points. Although it is very bizarre that probably by the time everyone listens to this build-up show, the game will be finished.
That's very true.
That is a valid point, because this goes out at 12.
Our predictions are out the window. Do you know what I mean? But I mean, speaking of the game itself, me personally, I'm confident into it. I think we're in a much better position than we were last year in terms of what we're facing. And I mean, it's fairness for us, no disrespect. We should be aiming above that level. And many teams in Europe we should be above. And it's just kind of the state Celtic find themselves in at the moment. And as I said before, Postecoglou said it's a must win. And I believe firmly that we need to get a result in this game to qualify for one of the competitions, either the Conference League or move forward into the knockout stages of the Europa League. But coming to yourself, John, in terms of lineup prediction, what have you gone for?
Can anybody? So, and this might just be a bit ignorance on my part, but is Juranovic injured?
He seems to be at the minute. I've not heard anything about him. He seems to be.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be pretty much the same setup as it was against Motherwell. Then Hart obviously is going to start goal. I think Bolingoli is not registered for Europe, or is he? What's the situation with him?
He's not in the Europa League squad. He's not in the Europa League squad.
If Juranovic is injured, I guess you're probably looking at. I don't even know, man. Taylor's still out.
Montgomery.
Aye, but is Scales registered? I mean,
Scales is registered. Yeah.
Do you maybe go with Scales? I don't know. I would just say I'll just play it. I'll just Montgomery, Starfelt, Vickers, Ralston. I think it'll be Kalmack in the middle of the parkway. I mean, he's gone blank, man. Rogic, Turnbull, Jota, Abada, and Kyogo.
Just for a brief moment there, John, I forgot. I just thought you forgot all of Celtic's players. Just for a brief moment. It just came into my head. I was going to give you a hand there, but I'm glad you dug yourself out of that hole. But me personally, this is the game where these games I was alluding to before, tough opposition. It's maybe a bit of a thing to say about Furnace Faros, but they did put us out previously in a European competition, so we have to respect that. I think myself that you'll have Rogic dropping out and Beaton coming back in and pushing McGregor up to that number 8 position. So my team would be Hart, Ralston, Carter Vickers, Starfelt, Montgomery, Beaton, McGregor, Turnbull, Abada, Kyogo, and Jota. What about yourself, Anthony?
That's the team I was going to go for, Stephen. I did think that, unless if it doesn't go with Beaton, it may well be Sorrow, or he may introduce McCarthy. We don't know. But if it was me, I agree, we do need that little bit more dig in the European games. And also, in a sense as well, it keeps Rogic a bit more fresher for the weekend as well. I would be very shocked if either Sorrow, McCarthy, or Beaton are not at least one or at least one of those guys aren't featuring in the middle of the park tomorrow.
And see, obviously, before we move on to score predictions, but I'm just interested to hear what you think. On this James McCarthy scenario, he seems to be dropped in now to match day squads. He's on the subs bench. He starts a game. He comes on, and then he's totally bombed out at Firpark, John. He wasn't even in the match day squad. And it's what we were discussing before. Me personally, I'm still on the side. I think it was a bizarre signing, a 4-year deal for a 31-year-old who's been injury prone.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bizarre signing. We needed depth, right? And he's added that, and that area in midfield is probably one of the most loaded we've got. So you'd fully. I mean, when you're coming in and you need to add players on the bench to accommodate all different positions of the park in case you need them. You didn't want to overload the bench with just midfielders. So, I mean, I fully expect to see the likes of him and Sorrow and that rotated on the bench going forward, unless one of them can cement themselves as a mainstay in the team. But I mean, the rotation, I don't think it's that weird for me anyway.
What about yourself, Anthony, on the McCarthy thing? I think you're right, John, when you say depth was needed, but a 1 year or 2 year deal, you can understand it. My issue with it, Anthony, is a 4 year deal for McCarthy. He'll be playing he's 35 at Celtic, and he hasn't really warranted so far. And yes, he's getting up to speed with how we play, but this has been since his 6-7 weeks he's been involved with Celtic training, and he doesn't seem to be getting anywhere, does he?
Well, he's certainly not cemented a place in the first team. That's for sure. And when he has come on, even as somebody, you're willing him to do well because he's always talked highly of the club. And if we remember, a few years back, he was absolutely. It really looked like he would hit the heights in England. It was just injury sort of curtailed that from happening. But yeah, I think as John says, there will come a point where he will sort of feature more. But yeah, it is true that a 4 year deal for a guy who hasn't really played much football recently was a bit strange. It may well end up being a great bit of business, but I think that's still to be, jury's still out on that.
Yeah, very much the jury's still out on. But look, we'll move on to score predictions for tomorrow's game against Furness Faros, and after come to yourself first. What have you gone for?
I'll go for 3-1 Celtic. I think a home tie. Confidence is high at the minute. We're still, a little bit suspect at the back, so you've got to, say what a shutout may be too much to ask. But going forward, we've got plenty of options, and I can see us finally getting off the mark in our group.
Yeah, 3-1. I was going to go for 3-1 to be honest with you, Anthony, as well. I think this is a game that's winnable, albeit our defence is still shaky, and that's why I'm putting the 1 in there, because you never know with Celtic sometimes. But come to yourself, John. What are you saying about score predictions?
I'm going to say 3-1 as well. I think it's a reasonable sort of scoreline. I think we've got enough about us to score a few goals. And as Anthony says, we're still a bit suspect at the back, and if they can catch us on the counter, then they may well score one. So, I mean, I think that's perfectly acceptable sort of scoreline.
Yeah, 3-1, and I mean the half free. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to watch it. I'm not working tomorrow, so all's good for me. I'm going to watch it, and I mean, many Celtic fans, we all know what they're like. They'll find a way to watch the game, and that's kind of the thing. The half-free kickoff, as we've all alluded to, is strange, but we have to deal with it, and it's a must-win game in the European stage of things. So we need to get it. We need to get that win. So 3-1's a great shout all round, guys. But look, that kind of brings us to the end of the show, and I'm going to end the show quite differently this time. I usually just end it quickly by thanking everyone for listening, but we all forget sometimes that football is just a game. And the people who play football are human beings much like ourselves, and health comes first. And we at the Endless Celts Podcast just want to pass on our best wishes to the Livingston goalkeeper, Daniel Barden, who's been diagnosed with testicular cancer. And again, if anyone feels like symptoms that's been described, contact your GP, your doctor, get checked, because it's better being safe than sorry. And we all echo our thoughts, and our prayers are with Daniel Barden. And we all wish him a speedy recovery. And in terms of the show, guys, that brings us to the end. And I just want to thank my co-host John for coming back on, and Anthony for coming back on. Fresh voices has been good to hear. And everyone who's listening, stay well and keep safe. Hail, hail.